Right, and we're back with another episode of Unfiltered Wellness. I am Gabriel Jacobo, my co-host Austin Main in here, and we have a special guest today, Mr. Ryan Gibney. Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Gabe.
Yeah, we're so excited for you to be here. And before we get into it, you've been in the strength and conditioning world for 2 decades plus, right? 25 plus years, is that right?
Yeah, 25 plus years. So 1999 professionally,
Wow.
but
Yeah.
yeah, sport
So
in sports all my life, basically.
yeah. So the knowledge is there, the base is there, you got all the stuff. So we're super excited to have you. And what kind of brought us here is, Austin, as a lot of people who are listening to this know, and you might know Ryan, if I don't know how much you guys have talked, but Austin used to own a gym, and he's been learning and training and testing things out for over about a decade now, over a decade. And, at the ripe age of 29 years old, that's pretty amazing for him to just dive right into it. So when we look at the world and sport of HYROX, we're always looking for ways to incorporate what we know, especially with what Austin has learned over the last decade, and apply it to HYROX. And with that methodology comes the conjugate method, right? So Austin was like splurging the internet, like what's going on here? Well, he found out that Sandy was coming to the U.S. to do a camp in Oklahoma with a guy that I know, and who actually has Sandy as a coach. Well, long story short, he's like, I wonder who's Sandy's coach. And then he went down the rabbit hole. He goes, it's this guy. It's Ryan Gibney. He says, we need to get him on the podcast. He's like, he does the conjugate training method. He's like, we got to get it. So that's how we ended up here. Am I right, Austin?
Yeah, and that's in brief conversation before this, Ryan actually went to OG West Side as well too. And so it's there's a difference between learning about it and going. Like two completely different things. And so tons of respect before you even get started on that, Ryan, because I know that's not just a 2-hour flight and you're there. It's a nice little flight over the pond there.
Certainly is. Yeah, I didn't go to the OG. I didn't go to Demis. I went to the new location before it was the new location.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate you being on here. Ryan, you live in Liverpool. Kind of tell us about where you're stationed at. What do you do on a daily basis? Who do you help, and kind of what that looks like right now?
Oh God, where do I begin? So I'm from Liverpool and I live in Liverpool, but I actually coach out of a facility called Vortex Performance Academy, which is in Chester, in Cheshire. So about an hour drive. Within our facility, we train a lot of UFC guys like Paddy the Baddy, we were speaking to before, and Luke Riley and a load of other MMA guys. But it's actually not an MMA gym. So I wanted to get that one up there. We train everyone. But in person, I trained Sandy, so Michael Sandbach, who I've trained since, oh God, four going on 5 years now. So when he first approached me, I had no idea what HYROX was. Pretty much like the rest of the world, it was still a little bit on the up then, and then made in sport. It wasn't the fast-growing monster it is today. And then a lot of my work also in this space is with HYROX Athletes, is online. So I'm working with Iris Steensgaard at the minute. He's a female Elite 15 Red Bull athlete. He's an absolute arse kicker. If you see it on the OCR circuit. I'm working with Tom Rogers in Australia to get into the Elite 15 last year and do a major qualification. I'm not Tom's coach at the moment, so I'll put that out there. And I'm working with a lot of really good, talented people up and coming. A young guy in the UK called Ross Walker, keep an eye out for him. And a load of other talented guys coming from everywhere from open to pro to doubles, pretty much like yourselves with your coaching. I coach everyone from general pop all the way right through the spectrum. But that's pretty much my day today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And
hope that answers your question. Sorry.
No, that does. I just want people to get a clear picture about what you do and where you're coming from. And what kind of brought us here is, like you said, it was Sandy. So you've been working with Sandy for 5 years. That's what led us down this rabbit hole. But Austin, I know you're just chomping at the bit. You have so many questions. So I just want to open the floor to you when it comes to, this methodology of training and how you guys share it. What what is the big thing that like opened your eyes about what Ryan's doing in the HYROX space right now?
Well, first off, let's be very clear. Me and Ryan both think that you should never lift a weight to get better at high rocks, right, Ryan? Never. We
Correct.
should never lift a weight for it.
No,
No,
definitely
it's
everyone.
it's it's really interesting because you start to look at these different thought patterns emerge of like just different methodologies in regards to creating an athlete. And I think a lot of times people get the conjugate system very misunderstood. They look at it and they're like, oh, that's for powerlifters. It's not about powerlifting. It's not about, you can use it for powerlifting, but you can also use it for any other sport goal as well if you understand the principles behind it. Which, Ryan, I would love if you wanted to dive into this. I'd had one question here that I'd written down, and it says, everybody says you just need to be strong enough for the sport, and then it's just a waste to try to get any stronger. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you look at that? And because I mean, we don't agree with that. So how do you explain that to Gabe, for example? Hey, Gabe, you need to get stronger for the sport. But Ryan, I squat 300 pounds. I'm strong enough. Like, what does that mean to you?
How strong is strong enough?
Yeah,
Basically, how
yeah,
strong is strong enough? There's no, if you want to go down the route of data, there's no definitive data to say what is strong enough. Strong is strong. We're trying to avoid the question, but strength also becomes very relative. So maxing out all the time, yeah, has it got its place for HYROX? Not really. Well, maybe for the right person it has. Does that mean you have to go on a West Side conjugate model, which isn't actually the only conjugate method? So I'll backtrack on that before I come back. So I got ahead of myself.
yeah.
Conjugate was actually made in the Soviet Union for track and field. It wasn't made
Mm,
for powerlifting. And it was in a thing called the Dynamo Club where they had all the best elite athletes in the world and basically experimented on them. Just to, that's a short version, right? And all conjugate means is to join together. That's all it means. So we're training multiple strength qualities at the same time. So we neglect none. Whereas if you look at what conventional wisdom's going on in HYROX with linear and block periodization, what I mean by periodization for the listeners is just how you structure your program. They're doing a strength phase, a muscular endurance phase, a power phase. So you're always leaving something on the table from the previous phase. So if you've just built a load of maximal strength and then you've moved on now into muscular endurance, then what happens to that maximum strength? And while you were building that maximum strength, what was going on with the muscular endurance? And then what was going on with your rate of force development or your speed or your power work? And this is where I think a lot of people are misunderstanding the message of the conjugate message method. They see the powerlifting side, they see West side, they see big guys and super strong guys and girls lifting 1 rep maxes every week and then doing speed work with chains and bands. And they can't really see the wood for the trees. They're just getting seduced by the big lifts and going, that's just going to fuck me up. If
Yeah.
if I push a sled, yeah, the weight's lighter, so that means the sled should be easier, but then I've got no engine. Maybe, but that's not how we train the conjugate method. We combine the different methods to feed each other.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, think of your match strength like in aerobic base. If we push that higher, like you would push your aerobic base higher, then the other qualities below it can go taller.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Yep.
Bigger base, higher peak. But where people misunderstand it is they're not filling in the gaps. We don't just train max strength on its own. We're training it concurrently with muscular endurance. We're training it concurrently with your aerobic base. We're going through all the different gears, so each quality transfers into the next. So to go back to the original answer, you're strong enough where it's not transferring anymore. When your
mm,
bar weight's going up, but your sled isn't going any quicker, that's when you're strong enough.
yeah.
Because then you need to look at something else. Because what the conjugate system's very good at doing is revealing weak links. So all that tells us is if your back squat's going up, for example, but now your sled's not, but your weight capacity is still increasing, then that identifies where the missing link is. Where is the problem? It's obviously not your back squat because that's still climbing, but your sled isn't moving. So what does that then show us? It always leaves clues.
Mm-hmm.
The conjugate method, when it's done correctly, will show you where the weak link is. and then
Yeah.
you rotate the exercise and find the weak link.
It sounds very familiar, Austin. Wouldn't you say, whenever we talk about sumo deadlifts for runners and how we can max out on sumos and how it can identify deficiencies in between sumo and conventional, right? You love using those two metrics.
Well, it's, I don't know if you saw this too, Ryan. It's like with runners, everything's here. And
Yeah,
I saw this more in the sport of CrossFit is really where I saw it most. You would take these CrossFitters who lived right here with their feet always just right under them, and you'd put
yeah,
them out in a wider position to box squat or sumo deadlift, and all of a sudden they couldn't use their strength anymore. It's like their hips
yeah,
couldn't move. And so I got to thinking in the sport of HYROX too. I was like, well, you're running all the time. Hip flexors are tight. It's anterior dominant. It's the same thing I'm seeing in CrossFit. What if you started
yeah,
taking them in a sumo deadlift? What would happen? Well, then all of a sudden
yeah,
you start to develop these positions, but also I'm never out there. I know it's not about you going on to the HYROX and doing a sumo deadlift to do it, but you're gaining access to more musculature. You're creating health demands that actually keep you in the sport longer. It gives you another option and pieces of training. You know, if Ryan, let's say that me and you both go in, we do a 500-pound deadlift, conventional, but then we do a 400-pound sumo. Me and you are both going to sit there and go, well, why is the sumo so low versus the conventional? What do we need to fix? Because if we see that, we know, hey, there's an injury getting ready to happen. We got to go fix
cool.
this.
Yeah. I found the same thing where I started making a new son. Here's an example. He came from CrossFit into HYROX. So suddenly when he came to me, because I trained Sandy in person for context, suddenly I make him do a wide box squat. He's never been in that position. Suddenly he's like, my adductors are screaming. I never even knew I used these muscles. Suddenly he's opened up a whole new access to his adductors. So these muscles, which he used to pull on runs and things, and no longer getting pulled because now suddenly you're strengthening that lateral movement and them adductors by having his hips open and doing a wide, more athletic movement than a conventional, packed in, close kind of conventional back squat, if you want, or front squat. He's breaking out of that tight plane of motion where we don't play sport. And suddenly tapping into more musculature, which may not be a prime mover per se, but it's a massive stabilizer in all your athletic movements. You know,
That's a good way to put it.
how many times have you played a sport or done a session and muscles you never even knew you were using or sore the next day? Not the ones you expected. So it's about tapping into these things because, as Austin correctly said, they're the ones that are going to fail you and get injured. The ones you neglect. You know, it's not all about just drilling the same movement patterns and the HYROX movement patterns, which is my pet peeve. That's all I see in the UK. I'm sure it's the same way you guys are. People
Yeah.
just do endless metcons and HYROX sims and think it's going to improve. But
Yeah.
it's, there's nothing built below it.
Yeah, I think and so I'll speak for like myself right now. So I'm in HYROX. I compete in HYROX, and I want to see how far I can do it. Again, I'm just Austin. When was my first race? It was a doubles open race back in 2024 November. So not about a year and a half. I've been doing it a year and a half, and I've consistently gotten better. Consistently got better. So when we think about a lot of these questions, I don't have this huge aerobic base like a lot of these elite 15 athletes have, right? But I do know that I have some other things that they don't, coming from a team sports background and also what we're doing on a weekly basis with training. So whenever you get like a new athlete come in, what is the first thing you're looking at, whether it be maybe from a amateur perspective or any, leading up to somebody who's kind of like in my corner with like, how far can I really take this? Like where is my ceiling here?
You need to know where you've been before we know where you're going. So we need to know what you've done, what's your background, what sports have you played, like what you told me there's gold. You come from a team sport background.
Mm-hmm.
So the next question is, well, what was the team sport? What was your
Baseball.
position?
Yep.
Baseball, okay. So then what was your position? So then I have to look at the demands of that sport and the demands of that position and see where I can find common ground and crossover and go, okay, well, I can use that.
Mm-hmm.
So that highlights to me immediately before I even ask you any more questions is I should have a pretty good picture in my head of what you've been doing for the last 10 plus years. Has everything been linear sprints? Has everything always been a load of arm dominant swings or pitches? Are you going to be super tight on one side and super strong or jacked on the other side? Where are you at? What injuries are you at? If you have rotator cuff tears, you know, on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And then I ask you the questions on top of that. Well, so what does that look like? Have you had any injuries?
Yeah.
and that's when it all starts coming out then. Well, about 6 ACL ruptures, and you're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
but then that then tells me kind of what kind of dominant athlete you are, your force, your velocity, you come from an aerobic background. So then we've got other levers to pull. So because you knew what's low hanging fruit, where are we going to get the biggest bang for buck? Coming from baseball, I'm thinking, okay, so let's get you an aerobic base. You're already pretty fucking strong. Most baseball players are, from what I know. So not too concerned about that, but let's get you stronger, but more functionally to suit the sport you're now playing. But let's push that base. Conversely, if you come from the opposite side and you're just an aerobic animal, but you're absolutely weak as piss, then I don't really need to push the aerobic side too hard. I need to prioritize on getting you strong and getting you robust and then build the aerobic capacity within it. So as we get close to the season, we can switch them over slightly to suit the sport.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's all about just working on what's in front of you. There's no genetic one size fits all for everybody. We need to go
Yeah.
into the weeds of what are you presenting when you come to me? Where are you? What are your injury histories like? What's your training history like? What you naturally gravitate towards if I left you on your own? You just been doing all the fucking chest and biceps, and well, I'm not fucking squatting. You know, like if I was to fly on the wall, would I just see you doing bicep and tricep supersets over there, and a little bit of a chest pump for the beach? You know, but that's how you've got to look at it. Because on a bad day, an athlete's going to go to their default.
Yeah.
They're always going to go to their default. So we have to kind of try and build a new default and show you a better way of training that suits you, not necessarily me and my beliefs. It's got to fit you, your lifestyle. So when we build that system around, that's why I think Conjugate, I am biased, obviously, but that's why I think Conjugate suits so many people. Because a lot of us who are drawn to sport and team sports, we're very type A, we get very bored easily. We like a change. We like a novel stimulus, but not too much novel stimulus. So it's great that it rotates. It keeps us guessing. Just as we feel we're getting somewhere, it changes. So we've always got that competition, that mini competition built in, something to always aim for. We're always getting some kind of win in every session. There's always a win. Doesn't matter if it's a rep PR, a weight PR, a time PR. Doesn't matter. There's always something to win. So you're always at battle with yourself, which I think perfectly aligns you then to going into the competition season, because you've just wired yourself to compete.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
psychological.
Yeah, what
Yeah.
great answer. Great answer. I've always just kind of been curious. Like, it's basically what we, kind of what we talk about is just let's just break down who you are. Who
Yeah.
are you as an athlete, and then we'll work around that. So go ahead,
It
Austin.
has to fit the person.
Yeah.
Sure. Sorry, I went long-winded right there.
No, I love it.
No,
I
that's
love it.
perfect. I'd be curious. So when you split it up, you look at, okay, this person needs more of an aerobic base. This person needs more of a strength base. Like, in neither circumstance do I say the person who needs an aerobic base, I'm not like, oh, you should never touch a weight. We're
No.
still going to lift. Now, are we going to lift 3-4 days a week? Probably not. We can probably get by with 2, maybe 3 with some special exercise on the third. Whereas the person who needs strength, maybe they are 3 main lift days and maybe even a 4th accessory type of day within that. Is that kind of how you look at the
Yeah.
same thing as well?
Yeah. To keep it HYROX specific, I basically default on 2 splits, a 2-day split or a 3-day split. The 3-day split more for the guys who need more strength.
Yeah.
Which is my kind of default off season as well, unless you really need to build an aerobic base. It's just a case of prioritizing energy. No one's got infinite time anymore. Everyone's got jobs, lives. So we don't want things falling through the gaps. So we've just got to prioritize the qualities where we really need to squeeze the most juice out of at certain times of the year. So that's why I fell to the kind of twice a week system and a 3 times a week system. Because when you speak to an athlete, like if we grill you, Gabe, sorry to point the finger at you, and I said, I'm guaranteeing you're going to PB even if you do 4 strength a week. You'll be like, I'm going to do it. I'm fucking right, I'm doing this, sign me up. But then life will get in the way and you won't do it. And then that starts having negative implications on your mindset then, and it pisses you off and you feel like you're cheating the system. So that's what I found. Everyone's intent or intention, and with the best will in the world, is to do it. But realistically, they can't.
Yeah.
And then they can't recover from it when they do. So I found the sweet spot for kind of hybrid HYROX athletes is that 2 or 3 day split. Guys coming from a strength background could probably get away with a little bit more. But them guys probably also need to get rid of one of them days and do a little bit more
Yeah.
race building.
Yeah.
Me.
And
That's me.
And that's why I say about what would you default to if you left your own devices. That's what we default to. We just go, because should I go on the bike or for the one? No, fuck that. I'll do some weights.
Yeah. You know what's funny is my favorite split in Austin. I think it was going into Dallas because I still was working at Swole. We found a really good split. It was 2 like really true strength days, but we had what Austin called an armor day. Armor.
Nice.
So special exercises and like really taking care of the midline, low back, things like that. And I just found that armor day was super duper amazing for me when it comes to how I felt with running, my overall how I recovered. There was still strength involved. It just wasn't like a huge strength day, right? It's funny because I was just looking at this over the weekend, Austin. I was curious looking back on our programming, and I was like, man, that armor was actually like a really good. I really liked that. You know, you can use it in different capacities, but I was like, he had something cooking in there. Yeah.
No, definitely, because I do it myself. I fall back on a GPP day, which is similar to an armor day. It's GPP plus. So it's a lot of what you need and a little bit of what you want.
Yes.
So that little bit of what you want keeps you bought in, and a lot of what you need there makes you feel better. So the 2 and 2 are a perfect match, and that's how we, as coaches, we sell it to you. But no, it's a great split. The caveat to my 3 and 2 day a week, is I always have a HYROX day, which is normally a Saturday, which bolts on, and that's why, like, well, you just know, you've got to train high and low. You can't just train high all the time. You've got to have those built-in recovery days, because you can't take for granted that an athlete's going to do them, because they won't. So you've got to program your recovery like you program training.
That's a good way to put it.
And when you program that in and it becomes part of the program, the athlete brain takes over then, and they start thinking it's not a day off, it's not optional. It doesn't mean just lie in bed all day and just like laze about, because that's not how we recover as humans. You know, we need movement.
Yeah, you know, I feel like a stress ball whenever I'm not doing anything. Like if I have a day like Sundays, like, I just feel like, you know?
Yeah, I'm moving into the online space to talk with this more than anything, because people literally will do what you write in your program. You cannot, sounds terrible, but you cannot give the athlete the power, because if it's a blank space, they will treat it as a blank space. You've got to say
it'll get filled in with what they want to fill it in with. Yeah.
And you know, that's life, I get that. But if you tell somebody, and you tell an athlete, this is a low day, what the low day means is lower your CNS, take some of the stress out of it, do something easy, go for a walk outdoors, cycle, be with your family, be with your kids, whatever. That registers. If you say recovery, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Case in point, this morning I had so Austin programs for me, and case in point was today was a low day. It was a 10K. He said like easy, chill, 10K. It was 6 miles, but 10K. That's it. And then I did some midline work when I got back, and then I did a cool down, and then I've got a 45 chill bike ride this morning, zone 1, zone 2, probably, or I'll err on the side of like low zone 2. Yeah. But the fact that he put chill, it wasn't like, you know, 10K or 6 miles. Chill. It made me focus throughout the run. I'm like, all right, focus on my breathing a little bit more.
Yeah.
Good.
And that's awesome, because that word chill personalized that whole session. because that's a language you understand. That to you
Mhm.
means, this doesn't mean redline this fucking thing, go insane. This means relax. This means take it down a notch. Because
Yeah.
like you say, if it just said 10K, 10K easy, too subjective. What does easy mean?
Yeah.
Or I'll just go hard on these hills and then go chill down, or what does
Yeah.
it mean?
Well, no, what I'll do sometimes is I want to push the top end of my zone 2, which will leak me into zone 3 for a portion of it, and it's low end zone 3, but we know that the higher your heart rate, the harder it is to recover from.
Yeah.
So will that affect my quality, my high CNS day later in the week? And I don't want it to do that. So the fact that he put the word chill made me
Yeah.
say, okay, you don't do that. Try to stay low to mid zone 2, and then, really, really focus on
Yeah.
it. So I
That's
love
me.
that you said that.
Everything's got to have intent. Your low work has to have intent. Your high work has to have intent. Or you're just shooting in the dark, and it will come back to bite you on the arse later in the week. So
Hmm.
just because it felt okay today to push a bit harder, what's the downstream effects of that as part of the bigger picture, the part of that program? What are you've only got so much recovery capability. So where's that getting borrowed from? That energy is getting borrowed from somewhere, and you're gonna have to
Yep.
pay for it somewhere down the track. And you probably have to pay for it where it matters on a high day. And then that high CNS day will probably bite you hard, and then the next day your recovery will be shit, and then your next day, and it's gonna take you, days, if you're lucky, to get back to where you should have been in the first place.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we've really got to drive that recovery as hard as we drive the training.
absolutely. I have a question, but Austin, do you have one before I ask
Yeah.
it?
If you want me to go ahead, I'd be glad to. Yeah, there's
Okay.
another one I had here listed for you. So maximal strength. Let's talk
Hmm.
about development of that in the sense of psychologically what this does
Okay.
for an athlete. So, because let's pretend, all right, Ryan, Gabe, and Austin, we're lined up at the line. We're starting this race today. One of them squats 100, one of them squats 300, one of them squats 500. Which one
Okay.
knows how to attack weights and go and compete and I'm going to go get what I want? Do you think there's a psychological component to maximal strength training?
I do, but I don't think there's a number on it, because I do think strength is super relative to the athlete,
Yeah.
because strength is intent. I know strength's measured in velocity. We don't want to go down that route, but for me, maximal strength is all mindset. It's all neural. It's all about that kind of killer instinct, switching on max intent. I was funny enough, I was having this chat with Sandy yesterday. I was making him do Zercher box squats, and the biggest cue I gave him was treat it like dynamic effort. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I said, fucking smashing off that box. I said, always explode off the box. Treat it like your life depends on it. I want it to come off the box like lightning. So even though he knew and I both know it's not going to move fast because it's too heavy, that doesn't mean that that intent shouldn't be there. That's the whole point of dynamic effort. That's the whole point of it to carry across. It's to tell a multi-unit to switch on and you to really rip in and explode to move it. If you hit it enough speed, it will move. It's like trying to push a car from a dead stop, isn't it? And that's
Yeah.
where that strength confidence comes. Once it gets going, your brain goes, it's moving, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. You're not going to be crushed by it. So, back to your question. Sorry.
No, that was perfect.
That's where I'm at with max strength. I don't even look at the numbers when it comes to non-strength sport athletes. It's about creating mindset and intent. It's about going into it and getting rid of a lot of the fear, because max effort's scary. And if it's not scary, it's not heavy enough.
I
So
really
it's,
like that answer. Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people in the high rock space, the guys who don't come from the strength background, which that's everybody, is
yeah,
the intent in the weight room doesn't match the intent that they put into their running, their erg work,
one,
their mixed modality, right? It feels like they prioritize one way over the other. And who are
yeah,
we to say that that's not the priority, because they're the ones who are at the top of the sport right
yeah,
now? But
yeah.
so I love the word intent.
Well,
Intent.
That,
I think it's overall it's both. Like you
yeah,
want to treat your aerobic work, your conditioning work like a professional, and you
mm,
also want to treat your strength work, your rehab work, your all these things like a professional. Don't be an
exactly,
amateur in one and a professional in the other.
exactly. And it is intent. Everything should have the same intent, and that intent should be maximal. Doesn't mean it has to be maximal intensity, because some things the intent's low. But like you say, you shouldn't sleep on it because it's recovery, because it's mobility, because it's skill work. Doesn't mean you do it half-assed. You
Yeah.
know, you need to treat everything with equal respect, or those things will be the things that find you out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Eventually, it always shows up.
It always,
Whatever's there, you can't hide. It's
it,
always shows up.
it always shows up. It always will. But yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
100%.
So
Everyone's got their own biases and opinions, haven't they? And I respect that, because that's what makes things interesting the way they are. It
yeah,
doesn't mean anybody's right or anyone's wrong. It just makes it a little bit more exciting to see if you're always right.
Yeah.
That's how I say it. It's a sport within itself,
Yeah.
because we've got our belief systems and we strongly believe in them. I think belief is a big part of success. If you believe in something enough, it's going to work.
absolutely. I do have a question. So when we're talking about how we structure, let's just say, so a lot of the people who truly listen to our podcast and kind of following us, we're finding that they're in the training hours per week. They fall anywhere from 8, as low as about maybe 8 hours, to as high as, what would you say, Austin? Like upwards of 12 or 14? Like that's kind of the
14. Yeah.
14. So from that, let's call it 10 to 14 hours per week is what we're seeing. How would you structure a week of training? And I know it's hard to say because you don't know the athlete, but
Yeah.
let's say it's exactly like you said, it's the 2 strengths per week, and you got the high CNS days. Where do you fit the pieces of the puzzle? Let's just say that their week starts on Monday. What do you do?
So we'll call it really basic. So like I've got a program out there, this isn't a plug, the High Strong program, which is just a general template. So I'll go with that. So we have 3 high days. So you've got your Monday, your Wednesday, and normally your Saturday, which is a 3rd high day. I'll explain as we get through the week why. So Monday would be your higher effort CNS run, so a threshold or a VO2 max run. I know a lot of people in the space aren't into VO2 max runs. But again, coming from a sports background, being professional rugby, you find when people don't get exposures to these high paces, that's what breaks them.
Yeah.
Because when it does happen, your body's not used to being exposed to this, so bad shit happens. But for me also, I believe in going through all the gears. Our body's got gears. How do you expect to achieve higher speeds if you never had exposure or felt higher speeds?
That's good.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll call it VO2 max run today. Or tempos, whatever name you want to give them. They've got that many things in one circles. Fast, short efforts, right? 400
Yeah.
meters and less. Okay. Later that day would be dynamic effort upper, max effort lower. So again, high CNS, but putting the two together, keeping it conjugate, or to keep things simple, day 1 strength. Yeah.
Yep.
Keep that nice and short. If needed, I would have an egg top up at the end of that. So it might be some electric intervals with a ski egg or a rod. Super short, 10 rounds. 1 to 3 work rest ratio, get it done, get used to it. Day 2, Tuesday, easy day, recovery, 45 minutes on a bike. Or if you're a good runner, you might do like an easy shakeout run, zone 1 to 2, like a recovery run. That's it.
Mhm.
That's training that day. Wednesday, same as Monday, but flipped on its head. So this time will be thresholds in the morning or in the evening, doesn't really matter. I'm just biasing it on people can get out of bed and go for a run. They can't necessarily get to the gym.
Yeah.
So that's why I did it this way, because I made this program for the masses. And then PM or late AM, you go to the gym. This will be dynamic effort lower, max effort upper. Yeah. If needed again, optional egg work. This is for people who are, need that optional egg work because they just haven't got the power output. So we take a little bit away from the accessory to give them that extra bit of anaerobic work with the eggs. So I noticed it's anaerobic work, it's short and explosive with full recovery.
Better, easier on the body. Yeah.
The lies, because everything's high moral this day. So we're already up there, so we're just finishing it short, sharp, kind of metabolic conditioning, but not really conditioning. It's tapping into the anaerobic work we've already done, pre-fatigued. Thursday, easy run or bike again. So if you can run, run. If you can't, this would be the day we'd go on a long, easy run, or we go a bit longer on a bike. Yeah. Friday would be complete recovery day. Yeah.
Mm.
And all will be revealed. So in this day, you might add some mobility, you may add some kind of really like personal work on, you might do some skill work. This might be the day you get an ice bath if that floats your boat, even though I believe it brings adaptation. I don't use it in a race week. But each to their own. This is kind of your turning point because Saturday is our HYROX specific day. This is the day where we do our HYROX workouts, our sims. This is where we get specific with times, durations, movement patterns, skills. This is the only one kind of true HYROX day. This will be our compromised running day. So we do some compromised running within this kind of HYROX workout simulation, whatever it may be. And then Sunday will be a recovery day or a complete day off, family day, rewind, get some exposure into the outdoors.
I
Very
love it.
long-winded, I know. But so basically, we're going high, low, high, low, high, low, and we're just combining. It would change for everyone based on your needs and your bias. You know, if you need strength, then strength will be the priority, and the run will come later. If you're off feet, your runs will be bikes and be air wear things. If you so there's so many moving parts, but the pattern of the week doesn't change.
Yeah.
Would that stay the same? So the structure you talked about, the high low, would you use that for somebody like so I've got New York City coming up, for example. Let's take a lot of athletes are their last race is either in New York City or they're going to do Worlds in June, right? And then it'll be off for a little bit.
Yeah.
Whenever they do this off season phase, are you still sticking to the same high low method through the off season and building, or are you prioritizing maybe some other pieces more? Maybe it's too high CNS because you're building a bigger aerobic base and strength.
Yeah. So it'd suit the athlete, but say it was someone who needed more strength, for example, they wanted to really push the strength side, we'd just go Monday, Wednesday, Friday highs for strength. But what would that look like? It'd be a kind of max effort and accessories lower Monday, max effort and accessories upper Wednesday, full body dynamic on Friday, and then you would still do on the Saturday your HYROX day. It just wouldn't be as intense. Because the full body dynamic, it's going to sit in that middle ground. It's not going to be too high CNS because a lot of the volume will be taken out and put into the max effort days.
I see. Okay.
You see it very much the same. Like I remember with this makes me laugh. I'm going back. I'm like 21 years old up at Sweatshop in Cincinnati with Shane, and he's like, "Oh, the light bulb went off," and it was just like I look at the programs, it's like you have this big soundboard and you just have these knobs. And as long as these knobs are all dialed in certain positions, like you get cool music. But if you got a knob out, like it's a little off. It's like, do I want to play strength? Do I want to play endurance? Do I want to play Ironman? Do I want to play bodybuilding? Like you just tweak these marks, but it's still the same board. It's still conjugate. It's still the same thing.
Well, I used this system in professional rugby way before this existed, before HYROX was a thing. And it worked perfectly in rugby. And I've used it with triathletes. I've used it with hockey players. I've used it with fighters. I've used it with frigging general pop who've got no desire to compete in anything. I've used it to get people small to go to the beach. It just, like you say, you just turn the knob to get the desired outcome you want. You're just not neglecting any one quality. So everyone's always a balanced athlete. Everybody just gets a bit of everything they need, just in varying amounts at different times.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Yeah, based on your goal and your needs. That's
I love
all.
it.
I was answering question, Gabe. Sorry.
Yeah, it did. It did. I'm just like thinking about it now. I'm thinking about a client specifically. I'm like, oh, how could we do that? Like, where could I move that? Like, just a little bit. Like my brain's starting to turn.
It's a super flexible system. It really is. You know what Austin will tell you. You can do whatever you like with it. You can fit it anywhere as long as you tick a few key boxes.
Yeah.
You
It's
just don't,
it's
you
it's
don't neglect the big rocks, basically. You adhere to the big rocks and you fill in the rest as you feel.
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear like the high low model. The reason this exists, it's all about recovery. It
Yep.
helps people be able to recover. That
Yeah.
was for me like uh, I mean Shane's been able to program for me for years, and I've got to work with a lot of different great coaches and stuff. But Shane has always been a backbone when it came to programming in
Yeah.
my workouts. And I mean we've gone from multiply powerlifting to CrossFit to marathons to powerlifting. Like we've got to do everything, and I've seen how Shane maneuvers
Yeah.
all these. And but there's one thing that I always kept coming back to, and I just could not recover. And so over time, what that led to is I kept having to find out new tools, new tools, new tools, and eventually it put me down in such a weird trail of food and everything else. Like I ran a marathon 2 days ago, I guess, and I still worked that afternoon after it. I still worked the next day. I don't feel like I ever it didn't break me like it had in
Yeah.
the past.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that was attributed just to, again, we're looking at food and the different utilization of these things, and understanding, all of it. Because even with that, Ryan, I see it the same freaking way. It's this
Well, it
stupid
is.
board that has these knobs that I'm just going in, and if I hit the principle, it's all the same. It's all the
Well,
freaking same.
it is. Even diet's friggin' conjugate, isn't it? You've got to
It's
rotate
all,
foods, you've got to rotate things, you've got to try different things, and one size doesn't fit all. You've got to find what works for you and fits your life, your lifestyle, your digestive system, your mood.
yeah,
People get on great on caffeine. People can't prevent caffeine. So you can't
Mm-hmm.
blanket approach, just have 200 milligram. It's not that simple.
yeah.
And that's what, winds me up in the HYROX space. Just do X, Y, Z. It's not that simple.
I laugh whenever you're like, well, this is my template. And it's like, this is this has the box, like this checks the big rocks. And if you do these, 99% of you are going to get better. But if
Yeah.
you're like, you want to really see, then it's like, okay, let's find out more about you. What do we tweak? What do we tweak? How can we get you to understand this system even then too? Like Gabe's done great about that as we've gone over time, like taking different nuggets, learning, going and taking knowledge in from other coaches. So then when we come together and have these conversations over training, over diets, like he's building the program. I'm just listening. I'm listening to the feedback and taking the tools that I have available and being like, okay, which one of these fits this that you're bringing up?
And that's how it should be. That's how we learn. That's how we get better. That's what I've always done myself, and that's why I've got no problem sharing anything I know with other coaches, because that's how we grow.
Yeah.
People were always good enough to extend it to me and pass on information to me. So I feel it's kind of like standing on the shoulders of giants, as it were. I feel it's my duty to share my version of what they taught me to other coaches, and like you'll probably take bits from what I've said and share with your clients, and we're just constantly refining our skills and refining the art. And I'll probably learn from yous kind of how you've interpreted what I kind of taught you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I never looked at it like that, or I've never had exposure to that kind of
Mm-hmm.
situation. And then when you get that feedback, it's powerful because you think, yeah, I get it. But
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
you do, but you can't see it sometimes. But no,
Yeah. That's
definitely,
good.
So
yeah,
there was so what just you know what happened the other day. I don't know if you saw Ryan. Willie George's. Did you see what he did?
no,
Oh, he went 56 something in Paris, and I looked at his stations. He went, what was it, 151 on sled push. I think it was like a high 2 on sled pull, and he bullied the stations. He
yeah,
was great in the lunges. He was as fast as he could be in wall balls. You can only be so fast there.
yeah,
But
here's what it is.
but his running, when you look at it compared to elites, it's still, it was 340s. Yeah, he had a couple high 330s, but man, it's so interesting to see that is capable. We obviously the dude, he's the fittest man on earth. Like, I'm not saying I'm not saying I'm Willie George. I'm just saying that, it's
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
really cool to see what that can do and translate to the sport of HYROX comparative to others right now.
it is because I've seen it a few times in the sport of HYROX now as well. When you've seen like getting sub 60 was unbelievable. Now under sub 60 is the norm. Getting
Yeah.
close to 50. Things like that. I've been involved long enough to kind of watch that with my own eyes and think, oh, it's nearly 10 minutes down in under 4 years. Like, it's
Yeah.
insane. It wasn't too long ago, only 2, 3 years ago. Anything mid-50s was like unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it's just coming down, down and down and down. You can argue what you like about equipment and courses and whatever, but it doesn't change the fact that people are getting better. People are just moving better. The times are coming down. It's attracting athletes from all different backgrounds who are doing some impressive stuff. And it's exciting to be around, isn't it?
It is.
Absolutely.
It's inspiring.
Absolutely.
I love it. Go ahead, Austin.
I know we've got to let you go here pretty soon, Ryan. I had one particular last question, Gabe, if you've got anything else too, but my big one, this is the one I want to ask everybody. Ryan, if you could go back 20 years in time in
Okay.
your professional career, what if you were to make one change? Obviously, we know everything happens for a reason, but if you could have made one change, what would you have done differently?
Oh, God. What would I done differently? Me personally or professionally?
Either, whichever one comes up first.
Good question.
Personally, I would have got obsessed with bench pressing and ended up needing 2 shoulder surgeries. Professionally, 20 years ago, I would have had a bigger emphasis on building an aerobic base in team sports.
Wow.
That
Wow.
that came about 15 years ago when I read Joe Jamison's book on ultimate MMA conditioning. It opened
Oh,
the
that's
eyes.
good.
It opened the eyes to the power of zone 2. Because I was from the school, like most of us, where the cardio eats your gains.
Yeah. Yep.
But I think I could have done so much more recovery-wise within team sports by just putting a little bit more zone 2 work in on them long days.
Oh,
Mm,
that's good. That's
man.
good. I saw the same thing. Like I'll go PR my powerlifting dots in here in the next 4 weeks after the marathon. Like I
Nice.
used to just powerlift, but now I'm stronger doing the other stuff.
Yeah.
Does it mean I could have gotten I don't know. I definitely could have been just stronger if I was just lifting and doing a little bit of cardio, but
Yeah.
there is just something to the recovery aspect of having that long
Yeah.
duration zone 2 work.
Well, Libby always said it with the GPP and the sled work. It was right before everyone's eyes, but none of us really interpreted it.
Uh-uh.
We couldn't really see what he was doing. I doubt he even knew what he was doing. But guys were pulling sleds around the trailer park for over a mile, a lap.
Yeah.
That's
So
sounds
That's
familiar,
that's
Austin.
20 plus minutes. Yeah, I wish you weren't in New York City. You had a sled we could drag around still.
yeah,
I
when
know.
the guys at Westside were doing cardiac output work and doing sled GPP work before anyone even knew what it was. And
Mhm.
all of us from the outside in couldn't even see it because we weren't quite sure what or why maybe was making them do it. These big monolith world record breaking powerlifters pulling us.
Yeah.
We just like, looks cool, but who's going to do that? Fast forward 20 years later, we're all pushing sleds in gyms.
Yeah, I love it. Love perspective. Yeah, the zone 2, man, what it does for your nervous system, why am I going to do 45 minutes zone 2 on the bike this evening? It's part of recovery. It's a part of,
Yeah.
Building fitness. Like I had a high CNS day yesterday. My whoop had me at like a 16 something, which is, pretty high. I woke up in the green today. I was recovered. I feel good today. So
Yeah.
there's something to that zone 2 where, gosh, I wish I would have
Oh,
just,
massively.
yeah,
It just
it's
makes
huge.
everything feel better, doesn't it? You recover better, you feel better. It just makes you, we're meant to do it. It makes our bodies work better.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't have any other questions. This has been a lot of fun. I can already think about another series of questions I would love to ask, but I think we'll get you on another podcast
Yeah.
here in the
Well,
future.
honestly, feel free to ask anything you want because sometimes I need it beaten out of me.
I love it. I love it. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can everyone find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram at Ryan Gibney Coaching, my website, ryangibney.com, That's pretty much it, really.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Austin, do you have
It's been
any,
a pleasure.
yes,
No,
thank you.
thanks very much for having me, guys. Really appreciate it. I've loved it. If
Thank you.
anyone's got any questions, fire them to you or fire them to me. I'll gladly answer anyone's questions.
That sounds great. Well, thank you guys for watching. This has been another episode of Unfiltered Wellness. We'll catch you later.